Hi, Islamic Dad here. I wanted to make a video on something, again, that I haven't seen too much written on or people make videos on. And that's some kind of one of the dirty tricks or secret weapons that narcissists have in their toolbox. And it's, um, it's kind of involved. So, you know, um, initially in your relationship, and I know in my relationship, both with my ex-wife, my ex-girlfriend, that it's very normal and natural, especially for someone who tends to be labeled as an empath or empathetic, that you're as a way of intimacy and forming a connection with a person in a relationship, you share very intimate things with them and share very personal information, very personal memories, thoughts, feelings, experiences that you would never share with anyone else. And not only that, but in also being this vulnerable, you're attempting to connect, create this emotional connection, as a way of deepening a bond of love with this person. And you're like, look, this is me. I'm showing you everything, including, I'm gonna, share some childhood trauma, some of my, lifelong fears and stuff like that. Really deep stuff. And for a lot of us, that's just very natural as a relationship goes on, and you want to become closer and closer and more emotionally connected to this person you're in the relationship with. And two things to note with a narcissist, or at least in my experience with this. One is the narcissist is hearing all these things that you're telling them, like your deepest fears, your greatest hopes, childhood traumas, and really events that may have happened in your past that shaped you as a person for the rest of your life. The narcissist is hearing these things and they're taking notes. They are taking notes. They are listening very closely, and it's not for the reason you want. They're taking notes and they're going to file that stuff away. And then a week, a month, a year, I'm sure for some of you out there, 10 years later, the two of you have an argument. Maybe it gets heated and it's more of like, a fight. And the two of you are, you both have raised voices and you're yelling at each other. And the narcissist says, okay, I'm going to pull out the big guns. And they open up their pocket and they pull out that list of your deepest fears, your lifelong dreams, childhood traumas, secrets that you've never told even your best friend. And they're just going to they're going to turn them into insults. And then they're going to throw them right back at you. And it is the worst experience in the world to be on the receiving end of that. And even if you get through the fight and you two quote make up, and maybe it's the next hour, the next day or something, and you're thinking that hurts. Those, I mean, at least for me, like those scars, they don't go away. Some of those fights and some of the things that I had thrown back in my face by someone who said, I love you, who I thought was on my same side, yeah, I got the scars. And, I'm sure that there's lots of viewers that have been on the receiving end of those, barbs and those fights. And I'm sorry, but I'm sure you have the scars too. And it's, again, it's something that I don't think people talk about for whatever reason as much as these other issues, with a narcissist, is just how devious the narcissist is in taking your most vulnerable moments, your most intimate secrets, and writing them down for ammunition to use against you later on. I mean, it's just evil. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, it's because the thing is, like, you know, a normal, say, even like a self-serving person, they're just going to be, okay, I'm going to do what's good for me. I want to do what's good for me. And they don't necessarily care about other people. But to actually save something, put it away, wait months, years, and then pull it out to hurt you, that's evil. I don't know what else to call it. It is just malicious. So that's one aspect of this topic that I wanted to touch on in this video. The other is, this is a red flag, and feel free to let me know in the comments if you've noticed or run into this yourself. Where, for me, with the two narcissists that I experienced in my life, most recent was my ex-girlfriend, so I'll use that, her as the example. But we might be having a nice time, like say we have a nice evening, we're both hanging out on the couch and we're just talking, we're getting really deeper and deeper into these, like, really great conversations that boyfriends and girlfriends have. And I'll feel just completely at ease, really comfortable, and I'll say, yeah, when I was a child, X, Y, Z, and I'll like share this like secret with her, something that really had a huge impact me, and it affected me for the rest of my life. And I will share this with her, and she might say, hey, I appreciate you sharing that with me. Would you like some ice cream? and or I, at other times, I might share something with her and be like, yeah, I've never told anyone else, this in my life, but I've always had this fear of this, and they'll say, oh my, God, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I have a friend, and they have a fear of, this other thing. And at the time, you're going, okay, wait, this is kind of off. Normal people, and I think I've mentioned this in previous videos, normal people get reciprocity. It's a no-brainer. I mean, when two people meet at work, on the street, at a bar, I mean, they could just be talking about something, and one of them will say, like, hey, I when I was younger, I saved up my money, and I had a 72 Chevelle, the 454. And the other person will be like, oh my God, that's great. My dream car was, always to have a, 69 Mustang. And I'm like, oh, great. There's reciprocity where one person will share something, and within the same context, the other person will share something, back, to show that there is some, understanding and bonding, and also a level of respect of being like, okay, you shared that with me, I'm going to share this with you. And narcissists they don't really get that. And so even when you're sharing something really, really deep with you, or with them, like in the example with my ex-girlfriend, like, she would either just change the discussion and just be like, okay, let's go have ice cream. Or if she remained present, she would do this really, I think it's devious, but kind of this odd thing where instead of sharing something, like a deep secret about her, she would share a deep secret about her sister, or a deep secret about her friend, or a deep secret about someone she knew in college. And because it was like that same level of information, just basically stuff you don't tell everybody, it fit more within the context, but it wasn't about her. I mean, she wasn't sharing it with me about her. She was sharing, it was about someone else. And so again, it's like this pretend reciprocity. It's like, oh, let me tell you about my friend who has a similar dream, or let me tell you about my sibling who has a similar fear. They don't they don't divulge about themselves. And again, so it's one of those things where it's I don't know if they're paranoid. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me, knowing what I've learned about narcissists, if one of the reasons they don't divulge that information as much or as easily as other people is because they're afraid that it'll be used against them, because that's what they're going to do. And so in the back of their mind, they're like, oh, don't share that information, because that, the only reason you share information is that the other person is going to take it and use it as ammo back to you. And so again, there might be me and my ex-girlfriend might have had fights in the later part of the relationship, and she might bring up well, of course, bring up these things, the childhood traumas, fears, hopes, dreams, all that, and just start lugging grenades at me. And it was, and I think it was one of those like aha moments where, she would start going below the belt. And right there, it's like, okay, normal people don't do that when they want to remain, when they're trying to keep the relationship. It's one thing for people to have differences and disagreements, but they're like, okay, let's not burn the house down while we're standing in it. That's stupid. And ultimately, at the end of the argument, you don't want to be surrounded by the ashes of a house you burned down. And so the narcissist would go, below the belt, and you might get angry and be like, oh yeah, well, and you might like go through your little filing system to like bring up something at that level to them. And that's when you're like, wait a minute, they haven't told me anything that I could even use if I was feeling that mean-spirited. And again, it's like the light goes off, and you're like, wait a minute, what is going on in this relationship here, where this person listens so patiently. I mean, most of the time they're talking about themselves, but in this one time they're listening very patiently, and you're divulging these like lifelong secrets to them, and they're listening and listening and nodding, and they may thank you and say, thank you for sharing that with me. And there's no reciprocity. None. They just talk about something else, either, a similar subject, or they change the subject altogether. But yeah, it's just very, very strange. And so I just want to talk about that, within this video. One, because I never read articles or hear anything, really talked about it. And two, I know for a lot of us going forward, either in existing relationships or in new relationships in the future, we're gun shy. We are very gun shy. And our radar is going, and we are on the lookout for, enemy subs. So my point is that if you find yourself, say, meeting someone, dating someone, in a relationship with someone, kind of keep an eye out for if that reciprocity is there. If you divulge something that's very meaningful to you, sit back and see what the other person does, and see if they just, start talking about football, or, the latest episode of whatever, or if they actually show up in the relationship and meet you, halfway, and share something equally important to them. Because I think, you know, that's a red flag to kind of be on the lookout for, is if you are made to feel safe and comfortable to the point where you share these things with the other person, but they don't do the same, where there's no reciprocity, that's a time to just stop and think about what's going on, before, you know, it gets too late. So I'll continue making these videos. Hopefully this one was helpful.